comes on the radio when you're headed home after the show. Remember what it's like to be there. You definitely had to be there. When you got no place to call your home, just remember.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill, one of the younger geezers, who is happy to tell you that we have even a younger honorary geezer joining us today with Jess, and she's the niece of Dan, who's a fellow geezer. And we're going to talk about something a little bit out of what our typical range has been, which is a band that was initially formed in the early 2000s and was part of kind of the second wave of the so-called emo style of music, which is kind of a combination of all kinds of genres, punk, alternative, indie, and particularly in this band, the Panic at the Disco, kind of a lot of interesting showbiz and vaudeville, musicals, all kinds of other things kind of compiled into a very interesting combination. And back when they put out their first record in '05, I think Jess probably was a fan at the outset or thereabouts. But the interesting thing is we want to kind of get a sense from her about both her interest in the band, as well as the fact that they've got a brand new record out this year, 2022, and it's called Viva Las Vengeance. And we'll just start with asking you, Jess, about how did you first discover these guys, or essentially now a solo act with a band, but in the days that you first discovered them, what was it about them, and how did you actually find them, in your little kind of fandom starting point?
So I actually got into them when I was in high school, so around like 2014 to 2018. My best friend, she was really into like Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, different like emo bands.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was the one who got me into that kind of music. And I really liked Panic at the Disco. I really liked Brendan Urie's voice and the range that he had. And I was a really big fan of the albums Death of a Bachelor and Pray for the Wicked. And I really liked like the theatrics and the kind of the edge that those albums had. I am a fan of their older stuff as well, but I'm just not as familiar with it because I was really young when it came out.
When you talk about high school age, I mean, I think, one of the hallmarks of kind of the emo sound, or a lot of the content really, is that it is kind of very, kind of personal, talks about things that would really matter, especially as a teenager, right? I mean, that's kind of a real strong connection point.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like with Panic, it can be kind of seen as rebelling,
mm-hmm.
which is what a lot of teens are kind of going for. You're trying to figure out who you are and what you're doing in life.
And so I'm going to ask Dan, who at this point perhaps has figured some of that out. Have you experienced a similar sort of revelation listening to the new Panic album? What's your take on this, Dan?
Well, in a real quick response to that, yeah, this is, I believe, their 7th album, and so they've, went through obvious changes and all that. But my initial take was, on first listen, I said, okay, this is without getting into the history of the lead singer and writer Brandon Urie, I said, okay, this is classic power pop to me. I heard Queen, a lot of Queen. I heard the Raspberries and other, kind of even T-Rexy stuff a little bit. I know that doesn't mean much to to Jess, the T-Rex or Raspberries, but I think Queen, I know Jess knows who Queen is in some of their music, but and I think right out of the box, the first 3 songs, I like the energy level and all that, and and his voice is just, he is definitely got one of the best tenors in the business. I mean, he can almost do anything with it. But as I got further into it, I thought there was a similarity in the overall sound of the songs, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I guess I was expecting a little more variety. But this is just me. This is just D here, and definitely a lot of energy. On a technical side, I thought what was kind of curious about this, that he made the intent to record this live to cassette tape, and then of course they went to the recording studio and did overdubs. I think the attempt was to get a more raw sound or something that would emulate maybe radio play in the cars. So yeah, and there was not too many solos in here, whether instrumentally, piano, keyboards, or anything like that. Just a lot of tight 4-minute, under 3-minute songs. Yeah, his obviously Brandon Urie's voice stands out front and center. And I think part of it, back to the question about adolescence, and I think in my reading, he was Brandon Urie was quoted as saying this was his way of sort of making a look back at when he was 17 or 18 years old, and when he's progressed. And that's a great point of view, I think. Although some of the songs, I thought, the lyrics I thought they weren't exactly super introspective to me. But the first song, Viva Las Vengeance and Maggie, and those, I thought out of the box, those were hot.
I wanna be a diva. I just wanna be free. On a sofa with sativa. Living the dream. Shut up and go to bed. She said, Viva Las Vegas. Shut up and go to bed. She said, Viva Las Vegas.
Yeah, Jess, what do you think about the album, and how does it stack up with the other works in Brandon's canon?
Yeah, so I actually agree with your point that a lot of the songs do start to sound similar. There weren't a whole lot that really stood out and were memorable to me. I did really enjoy Viva Las Vengeance, the first song. And I think it's To the Death at the very end. I thought they had a really nice outro as well that kind of tied the album together. But kind of in the middle, yeah, it does start to sound very similar, which I thought was kind of different from past albums, because those kind of had more memorable songs. Mm-hmm. I think this new album just doesn't really have the same edge that past albums had, which is okay. He's trying out like a different style. But yeah, as a fan of like past albums, I think I liked maybe the past stuff better than this album.
Okay. I did notice that, I was surprised that I was very happy with it. I mean, I thought it was, a pretty poppy record. And I noticed that Mike Viola is involved in this, which probably doesn't mean anything to anybody, but I, as a power pop guy myself, he had started in a band called the Candy Butchers, and he's done a lot of interesting work. He had worked with Wayne Schlesinger of Fountains of Wayne. Do I have that right? I think something like that. But anyway, he's got a good pedigree, and obviously he's very sympathetic with Brandon's approach to stuff, and they make sure that the music sounds as catchy as possible. I mean, I agree with you, Dan. I mean, there's a nice, strong Queen, almost, I guess everybody throws a Bowie kind of thing in there too, but that, and the Mark Bolan T-Rex sort of thing. I mean, I think he actually quotes or mentions T-Rex in one of the songs, so it's pretty interesting.
Honey, honey, you're my favorite drug. Keep your disco, give me T-Rex. Make up sex in the middle of a breakup. Pass me your last cigarette. Make up sex in the middle of a breakup.
Jess, in terms of where you put this now, in terms of the other stuff that you listen to, I mean, is this kind of in the mix, or is it something that because you've been a fan in the past, you gave it a listen, and you're gonna kind of set it aside and get back to other stuff, or will this be part of your iPod mix, if there was still an iPod that you would carry around?
I would say a few of the songs would make it into my list. But I think overall it might be something that I would put to the side. And I would go back and, like, just earlier today, I was listening to like some of their older stuff. Because it just, I don't know if it's like nostalgia factor coming in. But the songs are just more memorable, and they kind of mean more to me in the older albums.
Dan, where do you put this in your listening queue?
Okay, this was one of the things we've talked about before, trying to listen to more and talk about 21st century albums. and I wouldn't put it at the top of my list, but it's definitely worth it just for Brandon Urie's approach. And I kind of think one of the things he did with this, and I think Jess mentioned this earlier, that they've went through some personnel changes, and it's pretty much now Brandon Urie's project, although I think he has who's Spencer Smith that's still with him. And it's all pretty much his vision and everything. And I think he was trying to do something theatrical with this, like almost like a musical in terms of overall sound. And then I did a little bit more, just a little bit of background, and found out that he's performed now on Broadway. He was doing a role in Kinky Boots. So, and that's fine. He's just exploring different forms of artistic and musical expression. But that's what I get from this, that it was maybe that was the intent, or or at least that's the overall vision. It was supposed to be like an homage to pop music, and I think it is to maybe some 70s stuff, but it still has that almost not. There's a couple, how should I say, more ballady, melancholy songs, but aside from that, there's a lot of the backup. They're not backup vocals; they're more operatic vocals, and to me, that got a little. It got to me, but yeah, I think it's probably in the middle of my list at this point. And some things, some of the songs like "Local God" and "In the Middle of a Breakup," some lyrics are insightful, and others are to me just very they're just kind of a veneer. They don't get too much, but I think this is what he's going for. And you know, they're extremely popular. From what I take it, they've got like over, I don't know, 4 million followers on their website. They're on a big national tour now, and they're coming to St. Louis in a couple weeks. Hint, hint. But but I think that's what he was going for, kind of this big musical spectacular with, you could almost say one of these two songs you could put alongside Grease with its soundtrack. But yeah, I would have liked a little bit more statements from the instruments. Nothing long, but yeah, I was overpowered by the by his vocal abilities and just the overall perspective of that. So yeah, without getting into the, you know, song by song thing, but he's you know, God Killed Rock and Roll, Star Spangled Banner. Those are all songs that they seem like to flow into one another. So if I had to give, and this rating would be to other 55 and over geezers, I would say this would be, for me, probably a 3.5 out of a 1 to 5 scale. Worth a listen.
Jess, what would your ranking be?
For fans, it's hard to say because it really depends on your music taste. But for me personally, I would say a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, one quick. I wanted to ask Jess, of all the earlier Panic at the Disco albums, which one is your favorite, and which one would you recommend that we listen to?
My favorite would be Death of a Bachelor, personally. But I would recommend Vices and Virtues because those have like some really good classic Panic at the Disco songs too.
Okay.
Very good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Go out, don't let the light go out, don't let the light go out, don't let the light go out.
Wow.
Rush of blood floods, hot thoughts in my head. Red roses sitting silently beside the bed. I say